Welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast. I'm Chris Anderson, your host, and today we're going to be diving into the topic of imposter syndrome. A lot of people, myself included, have dealt with or are dealing with this topic of imposter syndrome. And so today I wanted to break down what it is and ways that we can overcome that in our life as we're building our online businesses. Get your pens and papers out, unless you're driving, and let's dive into it. So when you're starting out in video podcasting for your online brand to grow in a simpler way, imposter syndrome might be something you deal with again if you've already dealt with it once, or you might be dealing with it for the first time. It's an important topic to cover and understand because it can really slow down your growth as a business owner, and it can hinder you in life in general. If you feel like you're an imposter in a situation that you're trying to grow into or grow through. So I've broken this episode into 4 parts. The first is we're just going to define imposter syndrome. Part 2 are the common fears and imposter syndromes in video podcasting. Part 3 is overcoming the imposter syndrome and those fears while you're starting your video podcast. And in part 4 are just some real world examples to help you understand you're not alone and how to overcome these obstacles. All right, so part 1, what is fear? What is imposter syndrome? We're going to look it up. What is fear? Fear is be afraid of someone or something as likely to be dangerous, painful, or threatening. So it's emotion. There's something that is triggered when you're fearful because you think there's going to be some sort of pain or discomfort or something along that line. Imposter syndrome, also known as imposter phenomenon or impostorism, is a psychological occurrence in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So that's imposter syndrome. So basically, you're starting out in something new that you might not have a whole lot of experience in, but you're trying to build something different. You're trying to grow. You're trying to be different, and you feel like you're just not adequate. You feel like you're going to be a failure. You feel like people aren't going to believe what you're doing. And so that is what fear and imposter syndrome mean. So part 2, common fears and imposter syndrome within video podcasting. So a lot of these are based around how we look and how we sound, for one, because people are going to be listening to you and seeing you on camera. So that could be the biggest fear to start out with. What are people going to say about me, about my voice, how I look? And then, am I going to know what to say on camera? Am I going to know how to get a message across? What topics am I going to talk about? If I interview, how do I interview better? How do I be a good host? How do I find guests? Can I do this? Am I going to be a good podcast host? Will the podcast help my business? Will people just see me as a fraud? Will they believe that I'm an expert in this topic? Will they believe my experience, my expertise, my perspective on things? So all these thoughts start swirling around your head, like when you start out. When I started out, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to fight through, and I'm going to build something from it. Entrepreneurship is not easy. It's fairly simple, but it's not easy. There are moments you're going to have to grind. There are moments that you're going to have to really step out of your comfort zone, and you're going to have to overcome these fears and this imposter syndrome that are trying to hold you back in your state of comfort. That's just how we're wired, fight or flight. So you've got to push through that uncomfortable feeling, those lies of not being good enough to do this, because the body, your mind's trying to keep you safe and keep you contained, which we're not made for. I mean, you think of all the people out there having to start from scratch. Microsoft with Bill Gates, Zuckerberg with Facebook in college, and all the obstacles they had to go through to get to success. And it didn't happen overnight. Like Elevate, we're still super early on, like a year and a half maybe into our journey, and we're nowhere near where we need to be or want to be, and we're going to continue to grow. And that's the beauty of it. Like, just keep doing the right things and working hard and working smart and trying to improve and expanding and not giving up. You can outlast and you can grow and you can find the success. It'll come. But like Alex Hormozy says, like, we want so many things so quickly, we don't play the long game. And so if you can stay and play the long game, you're going to have a higher rate of chance of success if you can continue on and continue to improve and innovate and grow with things. So that's the same with imposter syndrome and video podcasting. When you're starting out, you've just got to do it. Like I was on a podcast the other day and I said, when I started, I was terrible. Go back and listen to the first episodes. It was a different title of the show. It was terrible. I was terrible. I'm still like learning and improving, but back then, oh my gosh, if you want like motivation and inspiration, go listen to some of the first episodes when it was Pencil Leadership and see how just awful I was, how awful it was. And just see the progression and see now there's hope for you. If I can go from sitting in the corner of a living room with terrible lighting, terrible acoustics, terrible audio, with kid headphones, unbelievable, youth headphones, literally set it on there, and get to where we are now in a studio, and you can. I'm nothing special. And so you've got to overcome that, and you've got to push through, because it's just something in your mind that's trying to keep you safe. And that brings us into part 3, which are how to overcome this fear and this imposter syndrome. So let's dive into those strategies on how to overcome and push through. So the first thing is just focus on your strengths and your skills and your successes, what you have done. That's what I always tell people when on the journey of Elevate, like where we are at now and where we're trying to go, it just seems like a huge obstacle and a huge hurdle. And it's like, how do we get to 50K a month? Will we ever get there? But then thinking where I started, quitting my job in 2020 with nothing coming in at all, no idea what I was going to do to get to 10K months. Don't forget where you came from to get where you are now, because we're so quick to, okay, the next goal, let's focus on that we forget all the obstacles and all the successes we've had along the way to get us to the goal that we originally had that we thought we'd never get to. And when you get to that goal, then you just got to remember that as you're going towards the next goal, hey, we've been here before, just let's continue to do more of the right thing that's got us here to get to that next level. So remembering your strengths and successes along the way will help you kind of push down that fear and that imposter syndrome that try to stick their ugly head out. So remember what you're good at, remember what you've done well and what's worked for you and the things you've overcome already, and keep moving forward. And then another thing to help you overcome the fear and the imposter syndrome is accepting and being okay with failure. Because I truly believe failure is not final. Failure is just a learning lesson on our journey. It's just a part of a chapter of our story. Because in the Bible, this too shall pass. Good or bad, this too shall pass. So any failure, any good thing, wherever you're at right now, we're in a country where things are just so uncertain economically and politically and everything, like this too shall pass. And it's just another day. And so being able to embrace those moments of like, oh, that didn't work. Or I launched my show and I have 5 listeners. One's my mom who did it twice on 2 devices or whatever it is. Use those as a learning. Okay, so people, what do they want to hear? What don't they like? What episodes did better? What content did better? How can I incorporate that more so people will continue to get value and like what I'm doing? So failure is just learning lessons to help us step forward. So don't see them as negative. See them as the step that's going to get you to that next level, and just keep taking those steps. And the faster you get through those, the next level you'll get to quicker. So don't see them as failures. Don't let that imposter syndrome get in your head like, oh my gosh, I screwed up. Like I'm such a fraud. I can't do this. Don't let that happen. See it twisted on its head. Failure is just a step to success. And then it really matters when you're battling fear and imposter syndrome. Who you surround yourself with is crucial. Are they supportive? Are they on board with your dreams and goals? When you put yourself around people who aren't, who want to quote unquote protect you, nothing wrong with that, but you got to be careful how much you listen to them or how much time you're around them, because they could start bringing you, oh, they're right. Jan's right. I'm not supposed to be doing this. Like, no one else in my family's done this or in my community, so I'm not supposed to do it. I can't do this. She's right. You hear it long enough, you start having it come in your head, and that's where imposter syndrome comes from. So having yourself supported and surrounded by people who are saying, yeah, keep going, you can do it. Take that step, take, that little bit of risk and really put yourself out there. Those people are who you want close to you. They're going to help you motivate you through those times of fear and imposter syndrome. And then remember, this is a marathon. This is a long distance run. This is a mountain climbing endeavor. This is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to go from just starting your video podcast to Joe Rogan size right out of the gate. This is one step at a time, one moment at a time growth. And if you do that and you can enjoy that process and you enjoy what comes from it, like in a blink of an eye, you'll be at a different spot. I feel like it's been like no time at all from when I started Elevate to where we are now. But I remember in the moments, some days I was just like, my goodness, am I Are we ever going to get to that next level? Am I ever going to figure this out? So in the moment, it seems forever, but like it seems like just yesterday, today, like it's just one of those weird things. So just take those small steps forward, one bite at a time. You're not going to eat the whole elephant at once. When you start looking at it like that, or when you start seeing like, how am I going to get to the top of the mountain? You get overwhelmed, and then that fear starts to creep in versus I'm just going to take the next step. I'm going to do this. This is what I can do right now today. And just keep taking those steps. Eventually you get to the mountaintop. And then you've also got to take care of yourself. Like you hear about grinding. There are moments where you're just going to have to grind. There's moments where you're not going to get all the sleep you need. I've been there. There's just those moments where you just have to grind. You just have to put your head down and just grit your teeth and get through it. And it's going to suck. That's part of it. If anyone tells you it's all sunshine and rainbows and there should be no suck in growing a business, I disagree wholeheartedly, because there are moments, if you're truly trying to build something and get things done and change the outcome and trajectory of your business, there are going to be moments that it just sucks. Like it does. I'm sorry. If you want something that doesn't suck, then you might want to reconsider entrepreneurship. So that's just the truth. But you got to take care of yourself. So you've got to know your limits, and you've got to be able to have those moments of just refreshment, like refreshing your mind, refreshing yourself, taking care of your body, your physical health, so you can continue to go and be able to grind when those moments come and when those moments have to happen. So you've got to have that self-care piece implemented. That's super important as well. So it's not like I'm saying grind and don't care for yourself. I'm saying you've got to grind some moments. Some days are just going to suck. Some days are going to be fine, normal, average days. Some days are just going to suck though. But through it all, you've got to be able to take care of yourself, because if you're the captain and you go down, the whole ship goes down. And I say that all the time. So make sure you're implementing that. And then part 4, these are just going to be some examples of people you might know or look up to that had to overcome a lot of things. The first thing that pops in my head are actors. Actors, a lot of successful ones have stories of coming through waiting tables. Harrison Ford was a carpenter who was working on George Lucas's cabinets, I think, and George Lucas talked him into being in some movies, which got him into Star Wars. Like, he was a carpenter, and he might have loved it, but he probably was like, man, I want to do more, and he just got connected with the right person and just worked through that. And I'm sure I would love to talk to Harrison Ford. So if anyone knows Harrison Ford and wants to get him on the podcast, would love to chat with him. I'm sure he had some imposter syndrome in moments. Am I really cut out to be an actor? But like the Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx brand, if you're a woman, you know who those are. She had no prior business experience. She had nothing. She faced rejection after rejection from investors until finally she found someone who believed in her vision and was able to get backing for it. And now Spanx is a huge company with a huge following. Pat Flynn, you might know him as a big podcaster, the host of founder of Smart Passive Income. He had imposter syndrome. He had no formal business training, but he just persisted to learn and grow and learn from others until he built something successful. Tim Ferriss, the author of 4 Hour Workweek, you might know him. He had imposter syndrome. He had fear of public speaking as well. So he had to overcome both of those things by forcing himself to put himself out there, give speeches and presentations to break through that. And a big thing he attributes his success to is accepting failure and welcoming it to be able to learn and grow. So those are just some people you probably have heard of that have been through imposter syndrome and fear that have overcome to build something successful. And again, it didn't happen overnight. I've overcome fear and imposter syndrome. When I first started out, I had no business experience ever. I was an athletic trainer. I went to school for athletic training. Never done any business. Never had a little lemonade stand growing up. Nothing. And it was just, I wanted to get in front of people and learn from them about how they built their business. And so that's why I started my podcast originally. Now it's the same thing, but for you to learn from them and from me on business growth and how to go from nothing to 6 figures and beyond, because that's what I've been able to do. And it's crazy to think about that. Like sometimes, like right now, like just saying that imposter syndrome starts to creep in, but I know because of my strengths and my past successes. And I understand now, like when that starts creeping in, I can say, no, get out of here. This is what I've done. This is what I've been through, and this is where I'm going. And I know through failures and through persistent actions and through consistency and through connecting with new people, like I know I'm going to get there. So that's how growth happened. And that's how you can improve and get over fear and imposter syndrome as well. So I hope you could take something away from this today. I know imposter syndrome and fears can really wreak havoc on businesses and lives. And so I hope you can take something away, implement it, and start to overcome that so you can start seeing more success and be able to continue to move forward. But again, just covering the ways, what is fear, what is imposter syndrome, and how to overcome it through these 4 parts. Defining fear and imposter syndrome. The second one, common fears and imposter syndrome in video podcasting and in business. The third is just were strategies to overcome those fear and imposter syndrome. And then just the fourth was some real world examples from people like Tim Ferriss, Pat Flynn, and Sarah Blakely. So take something away from this today. Share it with someone you might know who's starting a business, who probably is going to deal with imposter syndrome, or who's starting a video podcast. Share with them. Make a difference in their life. We can do so much more together. But until next time, get out there, keep elevating your business, elevating your life, and we'll talk again soon.